This is Unit 2, Part 3, General Elective, Gender in Modern World, Chapter, Gender in French Revolution. In this video, we will be covering the topic France from 1789 to 1870. Beginning with it, now the French society witnessed unrest and revolutions after 1789 also. So we see the revolution of 1789, but what about after that? So after that also, it wasn't that it was the last revolution. French society still witnessed some of the major revolutions of 1830, 1848 also we had one revolution, and 1871. So there were still major revolutions after 1789. But what change occurred after the revolution of 1789 was that women had started voicing their demands through women-owned journals and movements. La Femme Libre, which was one of the journal, it was the one of the women-centric journals of this time. So they had started voicing out their demands through journals. And this La Femme Libre was first appeared in the year 1832. It was produced by a group of working women who were inspired by the ideas of French Revolution, of Mary Wollstonecraft, of socialists like Saint Simon and Charles Fourier. So this La Femme Libre was a women-centric journal. Second, it appeared in 1832. Third, it was produced by a group of working women. And those working women were inspired by ideas of French Revolution and Mary Wollstonecraft. So this is all about La Femme Libre. Next thing is that these women believed, the women who wrote these journals, they believed that women's cause is people's cause. So if we are talking about women, it is that we are largely talking about people. So therefore, there was a need to transform both conditions of production and family. The main writers, if we see, of La Femme Libre, those writers include Suzanne Vauquelin, Desire Verret, and Oneid Deron. So these were the three main seamstress who were the writers of La Femme Libre. Now, next thing is that all the three women, these all three women, Suzanne, Oneid, Desire, they all demanded end of male domination in family and factory. So all these ideas were carried forward and asserted in the revolutions of 1830, 1848, and 1871. Now further, we will divide the next synopsis into three bases. The first being 1830 revolution, the second being 1848 revolution, and lastly, after 1870, how was the France? So in three parts, we will be further classifying the France from 1789 to 1870. Let's begin with the 1830 part. Now in 1830 revolution, uh, King Charles X was there, who was overthrown in an uprising in the streets of Paris. So Charles X was forced to flee, and who ascended instead of him was Louis Philippe. So Charles was overthrown, and Louis Philippe ascended the throne. So this is what we call the 1830 July Revolution. Coming on to Louis Philippe as a king. So here it is described that how Louis Philippe basically ruled his nature and what was his source of power. All these things is described in this panel. Now Louis Philippe ruled not as a king of France, but as a king of French. It was made clear that his right to rule came from people. It was not divinely granted, but his right came from the people itself. So as we call it, the July monarchy from 1830 to 1848, it saw the political dominance of high middle class. Louis Philippe clearly understood his base of power. So when we say that we saw the political dominance of high middle class people, so uh, we are the irony is that we are using word high as well as middle class. So here it is referring to the wealthy bourgeoisie. So wealthy bourgeoisie is what is the people who voted for Louis Philippe. So he clearly understood that his base of power were the wealthy bourgeois, and he kept their interest in mind. Now, to begin with, he was inspired by the ideas of liberalism and did not believe in the practices that were done by royal families as ruler of France. He, moved away himself from the ideas that were practiced by royal families. Rather, he was inspired by the ideas of liberalism and practiced those. And later in his reign, we see that Louis Philippe, he became increasingly rigid and dogmatic. He was ruling good, but later at the last years, he became kind of rigid and dogmatic leader, and therefore he was. So we have an example as well through which we can justify that he was rigid. In his president of council, he had this guy Francois Guizot. He was deeply unpopular, but Louis Philippe refused to remove him. So he was not the guy suitable to be in that president of council, but still he refused to remove him. So he was increasingly rigid. Coming to next, the situation gradually escalated until the revolutions of 1848, and 1848 saw the fall of monarchy and the creation of Second Republic. So 1830 revolution ended in 1848, and the creation of Second Republic took place. So that creation of Second Republic itself marks the beginning of the second part of this, that is the 1848 revolution. Coming on to that. So revolution of 1848 was a turning point. How can we say that it was a turning point? Because it had major consequences for all of the Europe. Now, as a result of this revolution, of the 1848 revolution, popular democratic revolts against authoritarian regimes broke out. So basically, in this revolution, people started raising their voices against the authoritarian regimes. So, kind of monarchy. So, people who wanted a democratic kind of a scenario, they started revolting against all other forms of ruling things. So, popular democratic revolts broke out in the countries of Austria and Hungary, in the German Confederation, in Prussia, and the Italian states of Milan, Venice, Turin, and Rome. Plus, there was another factor which also led to the growing discontent was the economic turndowns and bad harvest during the 1840s. So we were having economic downturns, harvest was not as good as expected, so it further added to that dissatisfaction. In February 1848, government had banned the holding of the fundraising dinners by activists where critics of the regime would meet, as public demonstrations and strikes were forbidden. So we see here that government banned the holding of those dinners, which was funded by government itself. It banned it. Why it banned was because at that time public demonstrations and strikes were forbidden by the government. So what the activists used to do was they gathered for a dinner and started criticizing the government. So what government did was that in return it banned the holding of that dinners. So as a result, protests and riots broke out in the streets of Paris. An angry mob converged to the royal palace and abdicated the king. And the king after that fled to England, and the Second Republic was then proclaimed. So basically, it is talking about Louis Philippe, that the angry mob converged into the royal palace, after which the king was abdicated, and then the king fled to England, and Second Republic was then proclaimed by the people itself. Now, this republic, what was major things done by this Second Republic? The Republic introduced first adult male suffrage. Second, it abolished slavery in French colonies. Third, it declared sovereign as people, which should ideally it should include women also. So it made these three major changes. Now coming on to December 1848. Now in December 1848, a nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte, Charles Louis Bonaparte, who was nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte, was elected as president of the Republic. He ruled from 1852 to 1870. In the beginning of his regime, that is the regime of Charles Louis Bonaparte, there was economic growth due to heavy industrialization. However, due to his reckless foreign policy, France experienced a humiliating defeat at the hands of Prussia under the leadership of Bismarck. So we see that during his regime, economic growth flourished because there was a heavy industrialization phase. However, at the end, we see that due to his reckless foreign policy, France was defeated by Prussia, and Prussia was at that time under the leadership of Bismarck. So basically, Bismarck defeated Charles. So this was all for today. Next, the France from 1870, that is the third part of the revolution. We will continue in the next video. Till then, like the video. Thank you.